Today we have an interview with Mississippi-based children's book illustrator Kay Meadows. In this interview, she shares the steps she took to becoming a professional illustrator and how she is helping others follow in her footsteps. We also discuss print on demand, social media marketing, how to get over creative block, and even a bit of relationship advice for artists. So stick around if you want to get some great tidbits and some free resources you can access right now.
Well, my name is Kay Meadows, and I am a children's book illustrator and surface pattern designer. And I predominantly work in watercolor and gouache and then mixed media as well. I've illustrated 4 books so far, and I'm working on a 5th one now.
How did that come about?
Well, it seriously fell in my lap. I had gone to an event near me, and there was a guy there who had some children's books that he'd written on a stand, and I thought, I'll buy a couple of these because I'm hoping to do, children's books, illustrations. It'd be good for my collection. And I actually said that to him. I said, I'm going to buy a couple of these books because I'm hoping to do children's book illustrations in the future. And he, I was so shocked. He goes, well, let me get you in touch with my publisher. He needs some illustrators. I just about passed out. I just was like, this never happens, And so sure enough, he got me in touch with the publisher, and we talked about what they were needing. I sent some examples, and then they gave me a book to do, and it's called Louisiana Animals ABC. That was the first book I did.
That is such a good lesson in putting yourself out there, because if you
Yes.
hadn't told the person that you were interested in doing that in the future.
Oh, I know. Because I almost didn't say it, but then I thought, go ahead and say it. And I was ready for him to say, well, good luck with that. I hope that goes well, but no, So it was very, very exciting. And I've been a graphic designer for many years, and I've had opportunities come along with different things, but not in this way, because the children book illustrator, that's just sort of a dream I had. And I had taken some online classes trying to get ready for that kind of thing, but still thought it was going to be way off in the future. And so it really did surprise me. And they like me, and they keep giving me more opportunities to create more books. So I keep doing it.
So can you tell us again, what is the name of the first book you illustrated?
Louisiana Animals ABC is written by Ricky Pittman. It's a great book.
And was there lots of different rounds? Like, I don't know anything about children's book illustration, and it's actually always been a fantasy of mine to do one. I'm hoping now that I have a kid, maybe it'll happen. What is the process? Do you kind of do a bunch of digital pictures and then send it to them and then get rounds for review, or how does that happen?
Pretty much that's kind of what it's like. First of all, they send you the manuscript, and then this particular publisher, he actually doesn't give a lot of directions. He said he really likes to see the illustrator sort of dream up whatever, and then they want sketches at the beginning. So they like I said, they send you the manuscript, and then you work on the sketches. And this was a 32-page book, so it was a pretty good sized book, and I did a lot of animals. So straight out of the chute, having this much artwork kind of was very, very intense, but a lot of benefits too. But anyway, so the first thing you do is you get sketches back to them based on the manuscript and where the text goes on each page. So, and being that I was a graphic designer, I just sketched it in pencil. I don't do digital at this point. I'm still traditional. So I manually sketched it with a pencil, and then I put it into an InDesign file and send it back to them. So it's already set up in a book. It helps me to do it that way, just so I know I'm not missing any parts, or, something's not looking right for the page, or the spread, when you open a book and you have both pages open at the same time. So I send that back to them. And so then if they do have any changes, that's when they will come back and say, make these changes. And it's still in the sketch form, because you do not want to have painted something and then they change it. So I will send the sketches back. And fortunately on that book, they didn't really have many changes. The changes didn't come until after I had painted. So that is exactly what happened to me. So, but it wasn't that many changes. What happened, it was just so hilarious, some of the things that they said once I painted it. I did a possum and I did a squirrel, and there was one other animal I forget that they had issues with, and like the possum they said looked evil and they wanted him to look more like he was smiling, so I had to update his face for that. And then the squirrel, they said he looked angry, so I had to make a nicer, friendlier looking squirrel. So anyway, it was just kind of funny. Oh, and the other picture that changed out was they had put oysters in as an animal, but oysters in a shell, is, I ended up doing like food, and so they were like, this isn't going to work because it was food. It wasn't like an animal. So we changed that one out. So fortunately, even though I had a bunch of animals to do, they didn't have that many changes, but it was kind of comical with the things that they said that needed to be changed. But it was pretty easy. They do have pretty short timelines though. They don't give you a whole lot of time. I had, I think, 2 months to do the sketches and then 3 months to do the paintings. And like I said, let's see, I did probably 2 animals per page to represent. It was, representing the letters A, B, C, D, so I did a lot. So that was very intense. And then the next book I did is called Chili Time, Y'all. It's how Texas found, the history of how Texas found its state cuisine. And so it was a little different because the artwork was like, the spread was the artwork. So I only had about 16 spreads to do. So there was like 11 by 17 size paintings, and I got those done. I did have a little bit, we kind of went back and forth a little bit more with that book, but it turned out to be, fine. But fortunately, this publisher's easy to work with. So it's not been too bad, to with the changes and stuff. But pretty much, like I said, you start out with sketches, you send in your ideas based on, the text, and then they come back and they'll let you know, because usually, like I said, you want to get all the changes done prior to painting. Fortunately, like I said, they didn't really have that many changes once I painted the book for Chili Time, Y'all. So it was okay. So, but it's intimidating a little bit if you've never done it. But the main thing is just just communicate with the publisher, and make sure you're getting what they need to them on time and stuff like that. That's really the main part of it is communicating and getting your stuff back to them, by their deadline.
Have you ever dabbled in like the self-publishing sort of things? I know a lot of artists now are doing the Kindle,
Yes.
print on demand, KDP, and getting things. Have you done any of that now that you're on a roll?
Well, I actually did this before I got the books. I created a journal using the KDP. And so, but I didn't do any writing in it. And at the time, I had toyed with the idea of writing a book, but had not really, I tried to write, but then I kept putting it aside, kind of like the whole thing when I said earlier about, I think it's in the future, so I keep doing it, but I keep putting it off. And so I haven't actually done anything other than the journal for the KDP at this point. Partly because marketing yourself is not as easy as you might think. Like, because when you do the KDP, they let you put in like 6 or 7 keywords, and that is it. So that right there really doesn't help your SEO. You have to be promoting it. And so the great thing about having a publisher is they're promoting it. They're doing all that work, and you get royalties, as payback, so it takes a little while to get the money, but then, you do get royalties and you do get paid. So it's kind of like, it just depends on if you really want to do the marketing and you really promote it. I know there's successful people doing it. It's just, you just got to realize that I think there's a misnomer that if you put your stuff on Etsy or you put stuff on Society6 or you put your stuff on Amazon, it's just gonna sell. And it's not quite that simple. You have to do a little more work than that and promote it yourself and keep it at the forefront of everybody's minds. And so being that I have been creating illustrations for a book and just my own art, I find it difficult to market. It's like it's just way too much to do. So I'm trying to get to a place where maybe I can hire somebody maybe do that side of it, because that seems to be the hard part for me, is actually being consistent, getting my information out there on social media.
Well, and I would assume if you illustrate a bunch of books for a publisher, then your name as an illustrator will kind of get out there, and then it will be, I would think, a little easier to market, right? Once you have a bigger audience, then marketing becomes easier.
Yeah, it does. And that's why I would recommend trying to go through a publisher. I'm not going to discourage anybody to try to self-publish either, but today the self-publishing thing is more accepted, but there was a time it kind of was looked down on. But today it's a completely different situation. But yeah, I think if you're with the publishing company and your name's getting out there, it does help, bring people to you. Because I know for me, prior to that, especially I would say other artists might come check me out. I would go and look at children's books and then look at who the illustrator was, and then look up on their website to see what what all was going on with them, just to see, So it does, because your books are out there a little bit more than just on Amazon. It's just very interesting how some people do really great and then some people don't. It's just, I think it has a lot to do with just how much you put yourself out there on social media to get anything you create, to sell. So
have you monetized your art in other ways? Do you sell your originals? How do you make money as an artist?
Yes, I do. But like I said, it's kind of a slow process at this point. The cool thing about me now being able to say I am a true children's book illustrator, it's given me a different platform. So I am beginning to take advantage of that. It also changed the perception of people looking at me, like the people that were already following me as an artist. They kind of now feel like I'm a little bit more bona fide themselves, so it's interesting. I'm in a transitional situation because now I'm truly considered a professional artist, compared to what it was prior to that. I still was a professional artist, just wasn't selling as much, So, and having a little bit harder time to, I guess, get traction as far as selling. But I'm not necessarily an overnight success either. So like I said, I have a different platform now. So I'm finding it a little easier to put stuff out there, and people are taking me more seriously. I have some products on Society 6, and I have some products on Etsy. I haven't really started promoting too much with those things because I'm still sort of filling up the products in there. And, between, like I said, illustrating and all that, it's sort of a slow process, but I'm hoping to get some traction and put some stuff out there to maybe pick up some stuff at Christmas time, get some people to buy some things at that point.
So do you have a Christmas sales plan? Have you sort of calendared out what you're going to do to make money this holiday season?
I do plan on, probably in the next week, I'm going to start talking about having the Etsy shop and the Society 6. And then I'm going to do my plan is the promote for Black Friday and Small Business Saturday, and really try to promote those 2 days to see how that goes and if I get any traction. Just promoting that I have some great gifts. I'm in the process of uploading some Christmas wrapping paper. So I want to try to start promoting that probably within the next few days, to see if I can get some people to buy some of the wrapping paper. But, so that's the plan. I realize every year I always plan a little too late. I'm trying to do better with my calendar planning, but I still kind of, it flies out of control, sadly.
So do you use mostly Instagram to promote your sales, or Facebook?
I'm using Facebook and Instagram. It's interesting because, with my Instagram, I purposely keep everything just about my art on Instagram, because I've had Facebook for years. And so I've also got a personal Facebook, and then I got my business thing, which I can't decide. I don't want to get rid of the business side because I've put a lot on there, but I don't get as much traction with my art business, on Facebook. But on my personal page, if I post anything about my artwork, I get a lot of traction. Well, I get a good bit of traction there. On Instagram, I get some. It's interesting because it can kind of go back and forth. It just depends on when my people are like on Facebook and when they're on Instagram. That's sort of I still seem to be kind of going between both of them, but I try to promote on both.
I feel like I have such a similar situation. So I have my personal Facebook, which I've had for a long time, which is like friends, family, colleagues, people from all over. And then I have my art Instagram and my art Facebook. And basically like 4 people follow my art Facebook or something. Like I don't really promote the art Facebook as much. Sometimes I just cross post, like Instagram allows you to so I just sort of have it there in case someone who's not a friend or family wants to come across it. And the same when I was having a lot of traction posting sort of my print on demand stuff on Facebook last year. And I don't know if the algorithms changed or something, but if I do a post now that's like linking to Redbubble or linking to Society6, it's like no one sees it. And then I do a personal post and hundreds of people are liking it. So I've seen a real difference this year. I'm actually having less luck promoting things on Facebook. I feel like Facebook doesn't want you to get off the platform. They don't want you to be like linking outside. And they kind of, you're not going to pay for an advertisement. They don't want you.
Right. Well, that's definitely, I think, a big issue that is not helping us at all. It's just not helping us at all. The one thing I just did, you may have already done this, but on my Instagram, I did go to direct.me and create the multi-link link for the bio, because I feel like there might be people that'll come check me out and they may go to the bio. So if they see the breakdown of my website, the 2 books that I've got that's published, I've got that list I mentioned a little bit earlier, which I haven't gone into just yet, but I have that where they can click and download the freebie with that. And then I have my Etsy store and my Society6 on there. So I'm hoping maybe that's going to help some. I still think I'll have to probably make a post about it, like go to my bio to see, my stuff on Etsy or whatever, but I'm hoping maybe that'll help. I don't know that it will, but that's what I'll try to do and see what happens. But, they are not helping us because they want to make money and they're trying. And if we're a business, they don't want us making money off of them, so I get it, but it's unfortunate, And
I find with Instagram, that's the especially hard part because you can't directly link like I was trying to. And I realized the URLs just get cut off. And so no one can go to them. And if you have to go to link in bio, it's like, you can't directly link to every single product on Society. You kind of just, here's my Society6 page, which has all kinds of stuff. And I find Society6 particularly hard to search.
Yeah. Society6, Spoonflower, and Etsy make it very hard for you to go just to your store. So, I've had to, the main thing is make sure you get your link. Like I know Etsy.com is Etsy.com/shop/my name. I just make sure I get that out there, because otherwise you do get lost in the shuffle of everybody, it's very frustrating. But at the same time, it's kind of cool too, because if I didn't have a social presence, no one would know anything. So, another cool thing about being a children's book illustrator is, and not all illustrators do this, but I have lined up book signings here where I live. And I've also gone down to Louisiana to do some. And so that helps to sort of generate some interest, and meeting people one-on-one is a real good thing too. So anytime you can do something like that, that's beneficial. So that's like doing an actual arts fair, or have a booth at some kind of craft show or whatever. I think that's another good way to get out and get your name out there and meet people and have people try to send people back to your website and to your stores that way.
I think I saw on your website that December 17th you have a live event, right? So that's perfect for the last minute Christmas shopping.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I was trying to get some things lined up. People are slow here. I just got that lined up. I've been calling and emailing and finally got through to somebody. I was starting to get kind of freaked out, like, come on, y'all, respond to me, please. I need to get this set up before Christmas, because January, no one's going to care.
Why don't you tell us about that freebie you were talking about? Is that to sign up for your newsletter?
Yes. Okay. So one of the reasons I was prepared to do a children's book illustration was the opportunity that came my way was because I had about 2 years before decided to commit to a daily art practice. So that means working on serious art, like whatever, like a finished painting, or just playing around with different kind of mediums or whatever. And so that's just something that I feel like I think a lot of artists struggle with. They so want their art to be their career, but then they kind of handle it like a hobby and they don't commit to working like a business. And so I sort of changed that. Now, a lot of that 2 years was taking classes and doing artwork or just doing artwork or whatever, hopefully building a portfolio of some sort. So I got to thinking about it. And when I did the first book, and I did, like I said, I did almost 60 or 70 animals. That's probably the first time I've ever done a true series of the same kind of thing, which was all animals. And I got to where I was being able to paint pretty fast. And like, I knew about how many animals I could paint in a day to hit the deadline. So I just decided I was going to create a list to help other people realize that if you will commit to your art practice, whether it's working on a serious painting or just playing or experimenting, you're actually going to be more prepared for the opportunities. So the list I created is 10 ways that a daily sketchbook / art practice can help you find your unique style and voice as an artist. And so I painted a real pretty background. And then I put the 10 different ways around on that page. And it's a free download if you go to my website and sign up for it. So.
I love that. I actually signed up recently for Miriam Schulman's email list building course. I don't know if you know Miriam Schulman.
Yes, I do.
Okay. And one of the things, because I was like, all right, I finally actually got out my very first newsletter this weekend to, the 30 people that had already been put on it a year ago and that I didn't do anything with. But yeah, she was talking about the freebie, and I thought, I don't know. I also, my struggle is, what audience do I want for my email list, right? Because obviously something like that is geared towards other artists, and of course artists buy your work. But, do I want my email list to be going to other artists, or do I want it to be going to, future collectors of my art? And if that's the case, what do they want as the freebie? Should I have a different freebie? How do I set that up?
Right. Well, I'm kind of in the same pickle because I had a newsletter sign up for a long time, and I have sent out newsletters, but this was predominantly to people who would be interested in buying my art or the books. So now that I've switched over and I'm doing this freebie, I will be attracting more artists. So I'm going to have to decide how I'm going to handle that. And I'm not sure. Part of the deal is this: I don't have a whole lot of people. I'm about like you. I have about really 30 people, maybe a little bit more, but not a whole bunch. And I could very possibly sort of just set them aside and just sort of do a newsletter to them every now and then, keeping them up to date on some of the things that I'm working on in artwork. And then, if it looks like that this freebie takes off and I get, interest in that, I might just have to do a different newsletter just for them, and I know that's a little bit extra work, but I figure since this other list is a smaller list, it won't be as, intense as it would, let's say the freebie ends up taking off and I start getting a lot of people following me, because I am hoping to do some classes to teach how to go about doing a daily practice. I know that sounds funny because, you might think, well, just sit down with a piece of paper. Well, there's a lot of things that I would address in those classes. So I will tell you, it took me forever to just come up with this list. I kind of had to just really figure out what my philosophy was for being an artist. And I know for years and years and years, I just kept feeling like I was dropping the ball by not creating art on a consistent level or consistent basis. And I actually had, when I was in college many years ago, I had a couple of teachers tell me, keep drawing. You're a very talented drawer. Just draw every day, make a point to do it. And I didn't do it. so I just, but like I said, a couple of years ago, I just was like, I'm fixing to take the step and we're going to change some things. And like I said, it transformed. It's given me a different situation. I'm a children's book illustrator. It did make a difference. And that's my message now. It's like, okay, y'all, if you really want to be serious, you're going to have to get serious, you know.
Are you thinking about making classes for Skillshare or in-person classes?
I'm trying to decide about that. I have followed a bunch of different artists over the years, like Kelly Ray Roberts. All her classes are on her website. I don't know if you've heard of Lolly. I think it's Lolly Mills. I think that's her name. She's from France. All her classes are online. Donna Downey, all her classes are on her website. I mean, all these people have done their classes on their website. And then I've heard good things about Skillshare, and then I've heard not so good things about Skillshare, you know, because it's a platform that can be volatile to you if for some reason you break their rules or whatever, and then they can kick you out. So it does concern me a little bit. I don't know that I would do anything like that, but it's concerning. Think about all the time and effort if you put into a class and then they say, oh, well, you know, you broke this rule. You know, I don't know. So I'm debating on that. I know some people use Kajabi, you know, so I'm looking into all that. I kind of like the YouTube thing because that's where I go just because it's easy to get to. I don't have to pay for anything. I mean, I know some people sign up for YouTube, but you know what I'm saying? It's there. And I've enjoyed watching a lot of different artists, you know, just do their thing on YouTube, you know, and I think YouTube can do the same thing Skillshare does, because if people find you there, you can send them to your website to do your classes or wherever you're at, you know, so however you choose to do it. But it's just a lot of decision making. So I'm trying to decide now. I might do something on Skillshare just to see if I get some interest, because just like with Society6 and Etsy, it's a big platform. And yes, you might be found, but then again, I don't know, you know, you just never know how it's going to work out unless you do something that's, you know, just takes off, which that would be fabulous. And I would love that. But, you know, you just don't know. You never know. You just have to experiment and try.
Do you have some particular YouTubers that you follow for art how-tos?
Yes. One of my favorites, Cee Cee Creations. She's from Canada. And she just has this, it's very meditative. She just sits there and paints, you know, and she'll talk a little bit and, you know, and so it's not necessarily, not all of her YouTube videos are instructional. Some of them are just her painting. And so they're just meditative just to watch her paint. She has this lovely music on there. So I like her.
So circling back, what are your best tips for getting over creative block? Is it this one thing a day? What are your best tips?
Well, for me, I find that if you will, you know, just try to draw just for a couple of minutes, doing whatever, you know, you can pick something in the room you're sitting in, or you can just, you know, whatever's on your mind, draw it, you know, and just try to do it for 2 or 3 minutes. And then I find that when I do that, I tend to keep going, especially if it goes well. Now, sometimes you can hit a place where it's like, oh, this isn't going good. But the main thing is just to keep pushing yourself a little bit, like try to set 5 minutes to draw. I would recommend going longer, but because a lot of times people just think I can't set aside 30 minutes. 30 minutes is just too much. Well, then try 5 minutes and see what happens. And more than likely, you're going to find that you will go a little bit longer because you're actually having fun. You know, you've lost track of time, because that's what happens with me when I create art. I lose track of time. So that's why I know I'm having a good time if I lose track of time. So that's just one of the things I would certainly recommend. The other thing is if you can't find something that you want to paint, let's say you just don't like anything in your room that you're looking at, then go to find some challenges. I don't know if you heard about the cup challenge on Instagram. It was Lori Siebert. Lori Siebert's the only artist name I can think of at the moment, but it was her and 2 other artists. They came together and created a challenge. It was a cup challenge, and it was based on 15 different female artists over the years. And we were supposed to create a cup based on their artwork or them or whatever. And it was so much fun. And so that's another thing, find challenges. And even if you don't, like around Halloween, there's challenges everywhere for Halloween, you know, and even if you can't do every single one, if you'll just try to do 2 or 3, whatever, you know, because sometimes you may run up against a theme you're thinking, I have no idea. Don't sit there and sweat it. Just go ahead and find something else to do, you know. but there's challenges all over Instagram. So I highly recommend that. And then of course, take some courses or get on YouTube and find some of the instructional courses that are on YouTube, you know. So there's really not an excuse to find something to draw or to paint. If nothing else, play with some new art mediums. You know, if you've been wanting to try out pen and ink, try out pen and ink. You know, I do recommend, this is one thing some people may not like me for, but I do recommend doing this traditionally, because Procreate, you know, you can do things to make your lines perfect and things like that, you know.
I just started learning Procreate this week. There's a lot of cheating that can happen.
Right. And then, you know what, there's nothing wrong with that if you're going to focus on Procreate, and you're going to, because that's what Procreate's there for, and it's great. But what I'm hoping will happen is, if you will use, I would even recommend not using a pencil. That might freak some people out, because what you're trying to do is, number one, get over perfectionism. Secondly, you're trying to truly observe and have your hand and your eye work together and hopefully draw whatever it is you're trying to create. And it just helps you learn what your mark making is and what you do when you have an ink, or if you're using watercolor or some kind of paint or whatever. It doesn't even have to be, it could be acrylic, you know, whatever. So it just, it helps, I think it helps you get away from being such a perfectionist as well. I mean, it just, if you will not use a pencil, if you're able to hit Command Z or erase something, then you're still going to benefit, but it's better when you try to do it where you're not being so perfect. One of my favorite artists her name's Ohn Mar Win, I think, or Ohn Win Mar, I forget how it goes. But her watercolor is so loose and fluid. And I promise you, I will never paint like her. But it's fun to watch her and how loose she is. She doesn't get bogged down with making sure every petal of the flower is perfect, you know. And so that's when you start creating daily and you're just creating, you know, you just have fun with it. And it just helps you, I think, truly find your voice and style. And that's another cool thing about daily creating is if you're painting something or you're working on something and you start seeing a theme, let's say one thing that shows up in my artwork a lot is hands. You'll start noticing things that you kind of are drawn to. So that's your voice. That's something, that symbol or whatever is helping you to see what you're drawn to. And then that starts showing up in your artwork, and you're able to kind of explain why, you know, you've created something, versus when you paint something every, let's say, 2 times a year, you don't develop why you're doing it. You know, you may not be able to explain or talk about why you painted something. So that's why, you know, I think doing daily art, whether it's in a sketchbook, you can do just a sketchbook, or you can just do it on paper. It helps you start developing more so as an artist and your style, and you'll start seeing how you handle, you know, the different types of mediums, and you'll start seeing a look come from it as well.
Do you have any time management tips for artists?
Well, I can honestly admit I struggle with time management myself, but I try not to be too hard on myself. I just try to every day, like I said, at a certain time. I actually have a day job, and so once I get done with the day job, I will take a break and go, you know, outside or whatever, and then I come back in and I'll just try to sit down for an hour and do that daily art practice. And or if I've got work to do, I'll work on the artwork, and I'll do that for a couple hours. And I'm not married, so it makes it really easy. I'm able to do that pretty regular with no trouble. Now, if someone's married, they may have to, what I suggest doing is, if they can't paint every day, try to set up like one day a week or one night a week where, you know, it's just like a doctor's appointment. You're not going to miss it. You're going to put it on the calendar. You're going to tell everybody you're busy, and you're going to get in there and you're going to work on the artwork. And if you can do it more than once a week, that's even better. But that's what I would suggest someone do is set up a studio time. And you just have to make that commitment to yourself. Like I said, that really happened with me 2 years ago when I made the commitment that I was going to start working on art on a daily manner. You know, I just had to realize that's because when, like I mentioned, I had a day job. Well, I don't call in and just say, I don't feel like coming in today. If I did that, they'd fire me, right? So same thing, you've got to make that commitment to yourself if that's what you want your career to be, because it's not just about just being an artist. Obviously, we have to create the art, but you have to be a business. You have to have a business mindset. You have to be an entrepreneur in the sense that, you got to have office hours or studio hours, and so that's why I would say, without a shadow of a doubt, make a commitment to yourself. If this is new to somebody, like if they've not had a daily art practice of any kind, start out with 1 day a week. And I don't mean like 8 hours. I'm talking about a couple of hours on Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon, or a couple of hours Thursday night, something like that. And if you can start hitting that milestone, just doing that once a week, you're probably going to go, hey, I might can add another day, but it does depend on everybody's schedule. You're a busy mom, you have a little one. So I know that it's not going to necessarily be as easy for me because I am not married. My son is out of the house. I'm an empty nester. So it's just, I have far more time than other people do. But I would say make a commitment to yourself to at least once a week. And while that may not be considered necessarily daily, if you're doing that once a week for the next year, you're going to see growth regardless, compared to doing it twice a year. You know what I mean? Really, it's the consistency. Because what happens is, it's just like, we mentioned Procreate. You know how if you learn something in Procreate and then you put Procreate for a long time, put it away for a long time and come back, you're going to have to sit there and go, oh, where was that again? And it's the same way with traditional artwork. You're not going to be as familiar with your watercolor or your acrylic paint. You're not going to have your flow going with how you have your stuff set up. I have my my studio table set up where, I'm right-handed. So all my paint, my water and my brushes are all to the right. Then I have my my paper center, and I have everything set up and I can get to things quickly. And so it's the consistency that makes the difference. It's not, obviously you're hopefully going to have quality at some point when you're continually to do it. That's probably the two main things, is just make a commitment to do art and then try to set up a time and tell everybody in your family, this is my time, this is what I'm doing, please don't interrupt me, that kind of thing.
And so I'm single too. Would you recommend future artists get divorced?
No, I don't.
You don't think that will help with their time management?
I'm not saying that at all. I don't.
I'm just joking around, but sometimes I think that I'm like, if I also, was dating someone or had someone living with me besides my baby, I'm like, that's a lot of time.
It is a lot of time. But the thing is, I don't want to go into all that, but part of the reason I've chosen to be single is because the fact that I did go through a pretty bad divorce, so and I will say this, I decided, because I know a lot of times when people go through a breakup, whether it's a boyfriend or whatever, a partner or a husband or wife or whatever, when you go through a breakup, it's hard to be alone. It's really hard to be alone sometimes for some people. Now, I don't have that problem. I'm actually okay by myself. And I have chosen this path because I want to focus on my artwork right now, but I would recommend highly, because I don't want to see people get divorced, because I just, like I said, I don't want to recommend that. But if there is someone who, is married and, they can work it out where their spouse is understanding, that would be super awesome, but it's just like, like I said, it goes back to how serious you are about this being your career. And, you have to get other people in your life to be aware of that as well. So that's
maybe the key is to date or marry other artists or people with at least their own passion, something that they've got going on, so that they're going to do their thing. You have time for your thing.
Right. Yeah. You definitely, the main thing is make sure the other person respects you and respects what you're doing, because I think that's usually some of the issues with some marriages. When a person, especially if it's like a situation where maybe the person's been a mom and they have found themselves in an empty nest situation and she's now interested in painting, you hope that husband would be nice, or the other spouse, whoever, would be nice and support them in that. But sometimes that doesn't happen because it just scares the other person, because they see, they see their spouse or their partner growing and changing, and it scares them, so it can get into a lot of stuff. The main thing I would say is hopefully find someone who respects you and respects what you do. Keep a boundary on that, because if that's what fulfills you, then, you sure don't need to my whole attitude is I'm not going to let another person, like another significant other, if I was going to be in a relationship, they're going to have to respect what I do and my boundaries. And I set very strong boundaries with that.
And I don't know if I'll include any of this.
Well, whatever you do, put a disclaimer that I'm not a counselor. I'm not recommending anything.
And definitely not recommending divorce publicly.
Right. Definitely. Because I am, I'm just talking from my own experience.
All right. So what are your best gift ideas for artists?
One of my favorite things, and I'm hoping to maybe purchase for myself, is I don't know if you've seen the ceramic art palettes. They're beautiful. Sylvan Clay Works. So you definitely want to check them out. She creates these fabulous palettes that you can put your paint out on. And it's just so neat. I think they're scrumptious. And I got a little half moon palette, but I want to she's got bigger ones. They're not super cheap, but they're really, really nice. And then there's also another company, Sugar House Company. They make ceramic palettes as well. And they're just very pretty, and they look really neat when you try to take, your little, your branding shots or whatever, if you're trying to take pictures of your paint and your brushes and that kind of thing. I know not everybody's traditional artist, but it is pretty cool. And then I like a magazine. So a subscription to a magazine called Somerset Studio. It's a collage type, like a mixed media type magazine. They promote that kind of artwork, but I just find it very inspirational to flip through. So I love that. So that's another suggestion, a subscription to Somerset Studio. And then I think a real nice set of brushes. Rosemary and Company is a great paintbrush company that I think would be a really nice gift.
And last but not least, where can we find you and your art?
Well, I have a website. It's kaymeadows.com. And then I have, like I said, an Etsy shop. I have Society 6. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook. Also, I have 2 books that you might see in bookstores around. That's Louisiana Animals, ABC, and then Chili Time Y'all.
Thank you for making it to the end of the episode. If you'd like to see more interviews like this one, please let me know in the comments. And as always, hit the like button or the dislike button, consider subscribing, and until next time, keep creating.